Hi, welcome to this week's episode. I'm very excited to introduce my guest today, Ryleigh Klimenko, who is a highly sought after business sales coach who specializes in helping ambitious coaches and entrepreneurs grow, scale, and close deals. She teaches elite conversational sales and has worked for Bank of America and TD Bank, among other financial organizations, before leaving her corporate career to begin her coaching practice. She mentors her community of business owners, teaching them exactly how to close deals with confidence, purpose, and finesse. Hi, Ryleigh. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be on your podcast. This is really cool. Really cool.
Yes, let's dive in. So please tell us, how did you get to doing what you're doing today?
Okay, so before becoming a coach and before kind of making that transition, I worked in corporate, and like many other people, I had been kind of climbing the corporate ladder and climbing and trying to, navigate and grow my career. And in 2016, I had my twins, and it was a really crazy pregnancy and a really crazy experience in that they're a very rare type of twin, which required like a long period of hospitalization. And what happened is and I know that there's other women in here that can definitely feel it and know what it's like, but I went back to work 4 weeks out after they were out of the NICU. I was right back to it. And I was leading a region. I was bringing my kids to hotels with the au pair. Like, we were at it. And what happened was I never actually let myself have time to heal and recover after actually having these kids. And so I just kept grinding. And that was 2016. And then in 2020, I was pregnant with my son. And then we had the pandemic. And like many other people, I'm kind of like, well, what happens? What's going on? And what are my next steps? And so what I did was, because I didn't know what COVID was going to do with pregnant women or what was going to happen in that capacity, I just took some time off, gave birth to my son a month later. And then I saw myself, and it was like I was looking back at a mirror, and I was looking back at the tape and saying, what am I going to do? Am I going to go back and have that same high stress experience, high grind experience? And I don't know, being a woman, and especially being a woman of color in that environment, it's so difficult to just have your voice heard and to kind of really make the impact that you know that you can make. And it's hard to be have your future in the hands of others. And so I made the decision that I didn't want to do that anymore. And I wanted to take my future into my own hands. And so what I did was I released myself from working at that company. And I have been building my coaching practice. Initially, I didn't jump right in though, right? I stayed home, I was with the kids. And then, I don't know, I just got bored. I was developing these little people, but I wasn't developing anyone else. And I wasn't, I didn't get that rush of excitement of seeing people have their aha moment or seeing people make progress or breakthrough or, all those things. And so I decided that I was going to hold a summit. And I didn't know, I didn't know how to market a summit. I didn't know how to build a landing page. I didn't know how to do any of that stuff. I had no idea. And I gave myself 2 weeks to figure it out. And I figured it out. And it was probably my second best event to date when it came to attendance, I think because of pure force of will. And God bless everybody who actually signed up to speak at that event, because I had no website, I had no name, I had no brand. They just kind of went with it. And so, it was really a cool thing. And after that, I started getting into and trying to figure out how I wanted to coach people, how I wanted to build my business and what I wanted to be. Definitely had its ups and turns, but that's how I got started, was kind of making that shift from the corporate world and deciding that I wanted to help people in a different way, but also have the balance that I was never able to get working my way up that ladder.
Amazing. Such an amazing story. And I'm curious, when you first decided to go into launching your own business, did you already know that coaching people around sales was going to be the thing, or did it take you a bit of time to figure that out?
Yeah, phenomenal question. No, I didn't. So I had just got done before that paying off $117,000 in debt. We had gone through, my husband and I had gone through this massive just uphill of debt and decided that we were going to eliminate it out of our lives altogether. So over the course of 18 months, we paid off all of our consumer debt. And then I said, well, this is kind of cool. I'd love to help people do this, right? And I started doing money coaching. And it's great. Like it was fun, but there was always something missing. And what was happening, and I really believe that sometimes the way you have to go about things is somewhat out of your control. I really do believe that. I think that sometimes, like, when the universe is speaking, you just need to listen. And for me, I kept having people come to me and saying, I'm starting a business. I'm inspired by you starting a business. I'm ready to do my own. Can you help me get off the ground? So I started doing some business coaching, and, it just kind of naturally transitioned. And then I was like, you know what? You guys have these wonderful products, these wonderful ideas. You are phenomenal at what you do and so passionate about what you do, but you can't close deals. Like you can't close deals. So when it's time for someone to actually pay you, the minute they say, oh, that's too much money, or let me think about it, or, whatever, you're being ghosted and you're not understanding what actually just happened. So I realized that my superpower, my strongest skill is closing deals. And that's what people truly needed. Like, it's not just, you can have a phenomenal lead generation system. You can get in front of hundreds of people, but if you can't close it, especially if you're selling high or mid price, if you can't close it, it's not going to serve you. And you're just going to get burnt out from the long run. So long story short, no, I didn't start off on this path, but I definitely was guided through this path. And there were so many ups and downs. I'll tell you, Sarah, like, what happened is I was so resistant, and this is something that happens for so many people. I was so resistant of the idea of like niching down and like, trying to choosing who I wanted to work with. I was like, I can work with anybody. And so I know so many people feel the same way. And so I was like making a little bit of money here or there, but not making enough to really make an impact. I wasn't replacing my income. And it was just like, I don't know, I was just grinding and hustling and working a ton of hours. So like I would wake up at 5 a.m. in the morning. This part I really didn't mind. I'd wake up at 5 a.m. in the morning, and then I'd like do morning mastermind, do some work. And then at 7:30, I'd put my mom hat on until about 6 p.m. And this is the part that I really did mind. From 6 to like midnight, I'd be hustling, grinding, doing whatever, and then continuing on until like sometimes 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning. And like, I was like, this is just miserable. It's absolutely miserable. And so what happened was I'm like, I'm doing this wrong. It's not working. So I locked myself in my office for a weekend, and I created this plan, my 5-year plan of what I wanted to do, how I wanted to touch people, and like just a different dynamic to what I was doing right then and there. And so the next day I hired a business coach who I knew and who I had a relationship with. And then within weeks, I sold out my first group coaching program, like hired her. Within weeks, it was just done. And then I got angry because I had built all these elaborate funnels and all like this whole crazy webinar system and all this stuff. And I never actually got to roll it out. So I was disappointed at not being able to roll out the work that I did. But, it was like, that was just part of the journey. That was just part of the shift.
Right. It's that Marie Forleo phrase ringing in my head, clarity comes from action. Like it's the only way that you're going to get to that clarity is by taking the action, right? And presumably, so you obviously sales was a skill that you developed in your corporate career, but it was just such like a natural part of what you were doing that you didn't immediately identify that as, like a superpower and a skill that you had until you had clients that were asking you, you were helping clients to solve problems for them. And that's when it came into play.
Yeah. For the most part. And I have to tell you, like, I am not a natural born salesperson. Like what people believe is what makes up someone who actually closes deals and does the best. Like they see some of the big names like Jeremy Minor or, Wolf of Wall Street, Jordan Belfort. They see those names and they associate that, or Dan Locke, they associate those big personalities And those harsh personalities of being like what sales are. You have to be arrogant, you have to be like domineering, you have to be manipulative, you have to do all those things to actually get people to purchase from you. And I was never that way. I'm like a deep introvert. Like I'm like a really like, I'm just not that person. And so I had to figure it out on my own, like what it would be. And I was blessed to have some amazing sales training. But what I found about all the sales training that I experienced was that it was always missing something. It was always missing, like, how do you actually get people to buy in the beginning? Or how do you actually get people to overcome the objections? Or how do you do this without actually having to have this long, drawn out script that people can read between? And so for me, it was really being able to show people, like being able to take those things and say, how do I apply it so it works for me? And once I got it down, that's when I was like, it's like the light switch happened. And I was able to train other people at Bank of America, at TD Bank, and at other places of how to have these conversations in meaningful ways and to create results and to create relationships really rapidly. Because when you think about someone like a teller or a personal banker, a teller, for instance, how long do they have with a client? They have just a couple minutes while they're running a transaction. So how do you build a relationship really quickly so that person's able to say, when you give me advice, I'm willing to accept it. And then when you think about someone like a personal banker or a business banker that has a little bit more time and space with someone, but they're offering you $1 million product, how do you then get the buy-in and the trust needed to be able to convert that sale? So those were the things that I learned and that I was able to then implement. And within my own business, that's what I focus on today, is teaching people that you don't have to use manipulation tactics. You don't have to be a natural born like extrovert salesperson. You can be yourself. You can be genuine. You can really care about people. It's entirely about building relationships. And when you become good at that, you become fire at closing deals.
Yeah, I think this is such an important conversation, particularly for women entrepreneurs, particularly for creative entrepreneurs too, who, do tend to have a lot of resistance around the concept of sales for exactly the reason that you shared, that a lot of, the identities that are associated with people who are good at sales just don't resonate for a lot of women, or for a lot of, like you say, introverts, or people who are like highly sensitive, or just not really outgoing, or, exhibiting a lot of those things that, like the men leaders in sales have kind of put their stake in the ground around what sales is. But the fact of the matter is, you have to be good at sales if you want to be good at business. Like, it's literally the number one skill, and you have to be good at it. Otherwise, your business is going to suck and your life is going to suck. So I think it's so important to share that a lot of the preconceptions that we have around it being hard or not available or limiting or unenjoyable or, out of alignment with our values or our integrity, we don't have to do sales in that way, because at the bottom, at the end of it, it just is human relationships, and it is just a conversation at the end of the day. So I love that you're bringing this conversation, and I would love for you to share what are some of the main like blind spots that you see in clients that you're working with that maybe they just aren't aware of, or preconceived notions that they have, or just some of the key things that people tend to struggle with.
Yeah. I think there's two key things. And I love that you mentioned like the creatives and those individuals who are like more in tune potentially with their intuitive side and kind of say, well, people are just going to come to me. The universe is going to bring these people to me, right? And as much as I believe that what you put out there, you get back, we also have to take action. And that's the key, right? Like, your product's not going to sell itself. You have to take action to get your product in the hands of the people that really need your transformation and really need what you have to offer. Otherwise, there's a reason why, unfortunately, 89% of businesses go out of business. And it doesn't have to be that way, because there are millions, billions of buyers out there who can really benefit from a number of different things. So there's two things that I think really stand out for me that I think we need to address. The first is this: rather than having a sales process, many times what I see are entrepreneurs who will info dump, right? And I call this feature dumping. They'll talk a lot about all the features and benefits to their product or service. And in doing so, they don't really focus in on their client's actual problem or the roadblock that's coming between their client and success. So we don't, like, when we dump information, let's put it this way. A client or a prospect is never going to purchase if they can't tie the solution to their problem. The answer will always be no, because people need to understand what it's going to do for them. And it's not enough to hear about your story or to hear about your background or to hear about all the features of the product. It's not enough. They have to be able to directly identify exactly what that product is going to do to help solve whatever problem is irritating them the most. And many times, like I said, people are relying upon info dumping and hoping that that's going to get there, but it doesn't. And so that's one shift that if you make, you'll have different results. If instead of talking about everything your program or your product does, you really focus on what is that one thing that is bothering that person and how can I help them solve it? Okay, that part is absolutely key. The next thing that I think is important for us to explore and to really think about are what objections really are. Many times if an objection comes up, it's like people will run away from that person, right? Like they can't click the Zoom button fast enough to get off the Zoom. Like, okay, I'm sorry. It's not apologizing. Like, I didn't mean it. I'll let you go. Have a great day. Have a great life. Because they're uncomfortable. They're uncomfortable with someone who looks at them and says, I need to talk to my spouse, or not right now. There's a fear of rejection in there that needs to be addressed, okay? And what I want the audience to really do is think about it this way. When someone is giving an objection, what they're doing is they're slowing down the sales process. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are saying no to you, right? But it means that they could be on the cusp of it, but they need to slow down what's happening because they need to think about it. They need to get their head around it. And there's something deep down that is still bothering them, that's stopping them from making a decision right then and there. So when we think about it that way, we have to think about why people don't buy. And there are only 3 reasons why people don't buy. 1, they never needed it in the first place. And you're fishing in the wrong pond. Like, you shouldn't be talking to this person. You didn't qualify them well enough. And they're not your person. And that's okay. We'd be comfortable with that. 2, they're not convinced the product has the right value for them. They're not convinced in the value or the transformation or how this is actually going to help them. They're not convinced. Or 3, they're not convinced that you are the right person to help them. Not yet. So when we understand those 3 things and we can identify which of the 3 is going on with that particular client, we can then shift the conversation so we can address whatever it is that's happening. And so I would encourage you, and next time someone sits down and says like, oh, I need more time, or no, or, let me talk to my spouse, or it's really too expensive. I can't afford this right now. Or let me go get a few more clients and then I'll work with you. The next time someone says that, don't let it sit there. Push forward and find out what is really on their mind. Because what they've told you right there is just a glimpse. That's not the real objection. 9 times out of 10, it's not the real objection. It's a glimpse that there's something wrong. So when you question it, the next thing they say when they start going and talking a little bit more, that's what the real objection is. So it's like we have to listen to understand rather than listen to answer.
I love that. Thank you for sharing those nuggets of wisdom. And what would you say is like the main message on your heart that you really wish more entrepreneurs knew?
Yeah. I think my key message, and I will say this until I'm blue in the face, is that 1, anyone can sell. Anyone. It doesn't matter what your personality type is. It doesn't matter what your background is. It doesn't matter what your internet connection is. It doesn't matter. Like, anyone can sell and be successful at selling. I believe in the law of compensation. If you don't know, the law of compensation is this. It is that you will be compensated in direct proportion to the overall value that you offer. So if you have a fire offer, and if you have something really good that creates transformation, that helps people, that elevates people, then ultimately people need to know about it and people need to be able to benefit from it. There are so many things that never took off because they were never marketed well, because people didn't know about them, because people didn't get to experience them, that should have taken off, that could have created like life-changing benefits to us. And so I just like want to say to everybody watching, it's like, don't let yourself be one of those things. Don't hold back. Don't wait. Don't let like fear get in the way of being able to really step into your power and be successful. And don't let the fear of sales or the fear of rejection within the sale stop you from helping people the way that you are meant to help people.
I love that. Such a powerful message. And I think it can be very easy to, get a little bit in our heads about strategy, particularly when we're learning a new skill, right? Because it does take a certain amount of like time and energy and repetition and, going through a growth curve and being uncomfortable to get good at something. But ultimately, at the end of the day, sales and marketing is just an extension of our work. Like, our work means nothing until it's in the hands of somebody else who gets to receive it, right? And I always tell my clients to just tap into your passion. Whenever we get stuck in our head, or whenever we're in fear, or whenever we think I'm not good enough to do something, or this is hard, or this is uncomfortable, to just come back to that reminder of our passion for the work and why we're doing the work in the first place and how much we love the work that we do. And then to just allow that to drive our abilities and our efforts and our action taking in sales and in marketing. Because at the end of the day, it is just it's a human conversation. It's you sharing your work and just knowing how to be smart about it, right? And knowing which skills and finding your own way there too. I believe there's always a path of least resistance, right? Like, you can, like, I don't do sales calls in my business. I sell just through copywriting, but that's sales. Marketing is sales. So there's always a way to make it work, right?
I do think there's always a way to make it work. And I think that's why, like, within my process, what I teach people is not to use scripts. And I know like everybody else out there is like teaching the sales scripts and how to rip them apart and, change them up and adapt to the next client. But I think that when you're reading something, you're not listening to your client. You're so busy worried about the next part coming out so it doesn't sound like you're reading, that you don't actually get to build a connection that you really need to, or ask a question that you might be inspired to ask based upon having a natural flow to the conversation. So rather than that, I teach people to understand where they are in the sales process so they understand the types of questions they should be asking to really get to the heart of the matter and help people transition to help them through the buying process. It's really what you're doing in a sales conversation or in a sales flow or in a funnel. You're helping people navigate the buying process so that they can ultimately make a decision that's going to benefit them, right? Because if your product doesn't help someone, you're not going to sell it to them, right? If they're not your right client, you're not going to just force your product on someone that's not going to benefit from them. So when we think about it that way, we're just helping people navigate it because that there is an overall huge benefit that they're going to take away from working with you.
Right. And I learned using scripts, and, it definitely had its place in my learning curve and in my process. But I agree with you. I think the most important thing is to just have that understanding of like the key pillars of the conversation so that you know how to navigate that, whether you are in a conversation, whether you're creating content, whether you're on a sales call, whether you're talking to someone that you like meet on the bus stop. It's really understanding what needs to be in that conversation. That's the most important thing.
Completely agree.
Thank you so much for joining us, Ryleigh. This has been such a great conversation. Please, can you share with us what you're up to these days and where people can find you if they want to learn more about your work?
Absolutely. Okay, I'm sorry. We seem to be having a camera problem. Not sure what's going on, but that's the way of it sometimes. Okay, so if you want to learn more about me, then I highly recommend you join my Facebook group, which is called Money Flow Mentors. So Money Flow Mentors is my community that I nurture and where I go live every single week. We host events on a regular basis, and I bring in different experts from different fields to be able to get exposure in that group on a regular basis. So highly recommend that. And then I have a little gift for you. For everyone watching. Like, I understand that you can be the best salesperson in the world, but if you can't get in front of clients, it's not really going to help you. So what I have offered is what's called the Ultimate Guide to Facebook Promo Groups. It is a guide that teaches you how to build connection and relationship rapidly in some of the promotional groups. And it gives you 200 groups that you are able to promote in. So that is what I would highly suggest you download. And we'll drop the link for that. And that's what I have for you.
Amazing. That sounds awesome. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your wisdom with us today. And thank you everybody for listening. Please share this episode with anybody who you know needs to up-level their sales game. And we will see you next week.
Amazing. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Ryleigh. Bye.
Bye.
For more inspirational content, head over to my website withsarahmac.com and please support the show by liking, commenting, and subscribing.